June 22, 1941. Eastern Front, Operation Barbarossa begins. 3 million German soldiers crossed into Soviet territory that morning. Behind them came the logistics, the supply trains, the ammunition wagons, the food convoys, everything an army needs to fight. And pulling those supplies were horses. Hundreds of thousands of horses. Not trucks, not tanks, not modern vehicles. Horses, animals that eat hay and oats. Animals that need water and rest. Animals that had pulled wagons in medieval times were now pulling wagons for the most modern army in Europe. Feldwebel Ernst Weber sat on a wooden supply wagon pulled by 2 tired horses somewhere in Ukraine. Around him stretched columns of similar wagons as far as he could see. Thousands of horses pulling thousands of wagons along dirt roads that would become mud swamps when rain came. He looked at the sky. Dark clouds gathering. Rain was coming, and when rain came, the horses would struggle. The wagons would sink, the army would slow down, and modern warfare doesn't wait for weather. Weber didn't know that on the other side of the world, America was building something different. Not bigger horses, not more wagons. Trucks, millions of trucks. Vehicles that don't need hay. Vehicles that don't get tired. Vehicles that can drive through mud that would stop a horse cold. This is the story of the Wehrmacht's greatest weakness. Not tactics, not training, not courage. Horses. The German army that looked modern in newsreels was actually powered by animals that Napoleon would have recognized. While America was building the most mechanized military in history, Germany was feeding millions of horses. This is the mathematics of 2.7 million horses versus 2.5 million trucks. This is the story of why Germany lost before the first shot was fired. Because you cannot conquer continents with horse-drawn wagons. Not in the 20th century. Not against an enemy with unlimited trucks. When World War II began in September 1939, the world saw German newsreels showing endless columns of tanks and trucks. The Blitzkrieg looked completely mechanized. Fast, modern, unstoppable. It was propaganda. Carefully edited to show only the tanks and motorized units. The camera never showed what came behind. Miles and miles and miles of horse-drawn wagons. Supply carts pulled by 2 or 4 horses. Artillery pieces hauled by horse teams. Field kitchens on wagons. Ammunition wagons. Medical wagons. Everything the army needed, pulled by animals. The numbers tell the real story. In September 1939, the Wehrmacht had approximately 3,000 tanks, 4,000 aircraft, and 750,000 horses. 750,000 horses. For every tank, Germany had 250 horses. For every aircraft, Germany had 187 horses. The German war machine wasn't built on steel and gasoline. It was built on hay and horseshoes. Why? Economics. Horses were cheap to produce. Germany had been breeding horses for centuries. Every farm had horses. When the Wehrmacht needed logistics animals, they simply requisitioned them from farms across Germany. Free transportation, or nearly free. Just feed them and work them until they die. Trucks were expensive. They required factories, steel, rubber, oil, skilled workers, complex supply chains. Germany's industry was focused on tanks and aircraft and submarines. Trucks were a lower priority. So Germany built some trucks but relied primarily on horses. The strategy made sense for short wars. Poland fell in 5 weeks. The horses could handle that. France fell in 6 weeks. Still manageable. But then came the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union was not a 6-week campaign. On June 22, 1941, the largest invasion in history began. 3 million German soldiers, supported by 600,000 horses, crossed into Soviet territory. 600,000 horses, that's more horses than Napoleon took to Russia in 1812. Each infantry division had approximately 4,000 horses. Each horse needed about 10 kilograms of fodder daily. That's 40,000 kilograms of horse food per division per day, just to feed the transportation system. Before feeding the soldiers, the Wehrmacht had 150 infantry divisions invading the Soviet Union. That meant 600,000 horses consuming 6,000 tons of fodder daily. 6,000 tons, every day, forever, just to feed the animals pulling the wagons. Compare this to a motorized division. A truck needs fuel, about 30 liters per 100 kilometers, but a truck can carry 2 tons of cargo. A horse wagon carries maybe 500 kilograms. A truck goes 50 kilometers per hour. A horse walks 5 kilometers per hour. A truck can operate 24 hours with driver changes. A horse needs rest and sleep. The mathematics were brutal. One truck did the work of 20 horse wagons while consuming less resources. But Germany had built horses instead of trucks. The first crisis came quickly. German units advanced so fast in the opening weeks that horse-drawn supply wagons couldn't keep up. Panzer divisions raced 300 kilometers in days. The horses walked maybe 30 kilometers per day when roads were good. The gap between advancing troops and supplies grew wider every day. By July 1941, German units were running out of ammunition and food, despite having plenty stored 200 kilometers behind the front. The supplies existed. The Wehrmacht just couldn't move them forward fast enough, because horses are slow. Then the weather changed, and everything got worse. In Russian, Rasputitsa means the season of mud. It happens twice yearly when rain or snow melt turns roads into swamps. In autumn 1941, the Rasputitsa destroyed German logistics. Paved roads barely existed in the Soviet Union. Most roads were dirt. When rain came, dirt became mud. Deep, sticky mud that grabbed wheels and hooves and didn't let go. Trucks got stuck but could sometimes be pulled out. Horses got stuck and often died. The mud was too deep. The wagons too heavy. Horses would strain and struggle and eventually just give up. Some died standing in harness. Others had to be shot because they couldn't be saved. A Wehrmacht quartermaster report from October 1941 documented the disaster. In a single week, Army Group Center lost 15,000 horses to exhaustion, mud, and cold. 15,000 horses gone. That's the logistics capacity of 3 entire divisions eliminated in 7 days. The Wehrmacht started the invasion with 600,000 horses. By December 1941, they had lost over 180,000. Dead from exhaustion, killed in action, starved when fodder couldn't reach them, or simply abandoned when units had to retreat quickly. American logistics would have looked completely different. Trucks don't die in mud. They get stuck, yes, but engineers pull them out, and they keep going. Trucks don't need hay that has to be transported forward. They need fuel that can be moved in tankers or pipelines. Trucks don't care about weather. Cold doesn't kill them. Mud slows them, but doesn't stop them. But Germany didn't have enough trucks. They had horses, and horses were dying by the thousands. Then winter came. Russian winter, the coldest winter in decades. Temperatures dropped to -30 degrees Celsius and stayed there for months. Horses aren't designed for that cold. They can survive cold weather with proper shelter and food. But Wehrmacht horses had neither. They stood outside in blizzards, pulling supply wagons. They slept outside in the snow. They ate whatever frozen fodder could be found. And they died in enormous numbers. A German soldier's diary from January 1942 describes finding a supply column. The horses were dead in harness, frozen standing up. The drivers were dead too, frozen trying to keep the animals moving. The cargo was food and winter clothing desperately needed at the front, now just sitting in wagons pulled by frozen corpses. We took what we could carry and kept moving. Between October 1941 and March 1942, the Wehrmacht lost over 300,000 horses on the Eastern Front. That's half of their logistics capacity, gone. Frozen, dead. The German solution was to requisition more horses from occupied territories. They took horses from Polish farms, Ukrainian farms, Russian farms, anywhere they could find horses. By 1943, they had taken over 2.7 million horses from occupied territories and Germany combined. But the losses never stopped. For every horse requisitioned, another died. The Eastern Front was consuming horses faster than Germany could replace them. Meanwhile, America was doing something completely different. When America entered the war in December 1941, military planners had a choice: build logistics around horses like Germany, or build logistics around trucks. They chose trucks. Completely, totally. No compromise. The numbers are staggering. Between 1941 and 1945, American industry produced 2.4 million trucks for military use. 2.4 million trucks. That's more trucks than Germany produced in its entire history as a nation. These weren't small trucks either. The GMCCCKW, the workhorse of American logistics, could carry 2.5 tons of cargo. It could drive 80 kilometers per hour on roads. It could ford rivers. It could operate in any weather. And most importantly, it didn't eat hay. But America went further. They didn't just build trucks for themselves. They built trucks for everyone. The British received over 400,000 American trucks. The Soviets received over 400,000 American trucks through Lend-Lease. The Free French, Canadians, Australians, everyone got American trucks. The most important truck was probably the Studebaker US-6. It was specifically designed for Soviet requirements and sent to Russia by the tens of thousands. Soviet General Georgy Zhukov later said that without American trucks, the Soviet Union could not have moved its armies. The trucks mattered more than tanks or aircraft because logistics wins wars. American military doctrine was built on trucks. Every division was fully motorized. Infantry divisions had over 2,000 trucks. Armored divisions had over 600 trucks. There were no horse-drawn units in the American Army. None. If you needed to move something, you used a truck. The logistics advantages were extraordinary. An American division could move 100 kilometers in a day and still have enough trucks to bring supplies forward. A German infantry division walked that distance in 4 days, and their horse wagons took 6 days to catch up. American divisions could be supplied from 200 kilometers away without difficulty. German divisions struggled to maintain supply lines over 50 kilometers. Because horses are slow and eat enormous amounts of fodder, when American forces landed in Normandy in June 1944, they brought trucks. Thousands of trucks. Within days, the Red Ball Express was operating. This was a convoy system using over 6,000 trucks to move supplies from beaches to frontline units. The trucks ran 24 hours per day. They carried 12,500 tons of supplies daily, and they did it without a single horse. By 1944, the difference between American and German logistics was grotesque. American units moved supplies with trucks that required fuel and maintenance. German units moved supplies with horses that required hay, water, rest, veterinary care, and constantly died and needed replacement. The math is damning. A German infantry division in 1944 had approximately 4,000 horses and 1,000 trucks. They needed 40 tons of fodder daily just to feed the horses. The American Infantry Division had 2,000 trucks and 0 horses. They needed 50 tons of fuel daily, but fuel is easier to transport than hay. Fodder had to be brought from rear areas because you can't collect 40 tons of hay daily from local areas without destroying local agriculture. Fuel could be moved in pipelines, tankers, or even just in jerrycans stacked in trucks. Horses got sick and needed veterinarians. The Wehrmacht had over 6,000 veterinarians in service by 1944 just to care for logistics animals. American trucks broke down and needed mechanics. But mechanics could repair multiple trucks, while veterinarians could only treat one horse at a time. Horses required rest. You can't work a horse 24 hours straight without killing it. Trucks could run continuously with driver shifts. American logistics operated around the clock. German logistics stopped at night so the horses could rest. The strangest part is that German military leadership knew this was a problem. Captured documents from 1943 include logistic studies analyzing the horse versus truck question. The conclusion was clear. Trucks were superior in every measurable way, but Germany couldn't build enough trucks. Their industry was already maxed out producing tanks, aircraft, and submarines. There was no spare capacity for millions of trucks, so Germany kept using horses, and kept losing horses, and kept requisitioning more horses. By 1944, they had taken so many horses from occupied territories that agriculture was collapsing. Farms couldn't plow fields without horses. Food production dropped, which created more supply problems because now they had to transport more food from further away. Using horses that needed to eat food. The system was eating itself. By 1945, German horse logistics had completely collapsed. They were still using horses because they had no choice, but the horses were dying faster than they could be replaced. A logistics report from January 1945 documented that the average horse in Wehrmacht service lasted for months before dying or becoming unable to work. For months, that means they needed to replace their entire horse pool 3 times per year. It was unsustainable. The horses themselves had deteriorated. In 1939, the Wehrmacht used strong farm horses weighing 500 kilograms or more. By 1945, they were using whatever animals they could find. Small horses, old horses, sick horses. Some units were using cattle to pull wagons because they couldn't find horses. American forces advancing into Germany in early 1945 reported finding abandoned German supply columns everywhere. Not abandoned because of enemy action. Abandoned because the horses died and there were no replacements. Wagons full of supplies just sitting on roads because there was nothing to pull them. Soviet forces advancing from the east reported the same thing. Mountains of supplies that Germany couldn't move because their horse logistics had failed. The final numbers are extraordinary. Between 1939 and 1945, the Wehrmacht used approximately 2.7 million horses. Of those, around 1.5 million died. Over half, the Eastern Front alone consumed over 1 million horses. America produced 2.4 million trucks during the same period and lost relatively few. Trucks could be repaired. Trucks could be recovered from battlefields. Trucks didn't die from exhaustion or freeze to death in winter. The comparison is brutal. Germany chose horses. America chose trucks. Germany lost 1.5 million horses and couldn't replace them. America built 2.4 million trucks and could build more any time. 2 logistics systems, one based on animals that Napoleon would recognize, one based on machines that represented the future of warfare. Germany entered the war with horses because horses were cheap and available. They lost the war partly because horses are slow, fragile, and die constantly. America entered the war with trucks because trucks were effective and they could build unlimited quantities. They won partly because trucks are fast, reliable, and don't eat hay. The strategic implications were enormous. German units could only advance as fast as horses could walk. American units could advance as fast as trucks could drive. German supply lines collapsed when horses died. American supply lines expanded because trucks could be built faster than they were destroyed. German commanders knew they were losing the logistics war. A captured German General Staff study from 1944 concluded that Wehrmacht logistics were fundamentally inferior to American logistics, and that this gap could not be closed without completely reindustrializing Germany, which was impossible while fighting a war on multiple fronts. So Germany kept using horses and kept losing them, and kept falling further behind an enemy that had trucks without limit. The irony is profound. Germany, the nation that pioneered blitzkrieg and mechanized warfare, fought most of the war with horse-drawn logistics. America, which entered the war late and unprepared, built the most motorized military in history within 4 years. The horse didn't lose the war for Germany, but the horse certainly didn't help them win. And in a war against an enemy with unlimited trucks, horse wagons were a guarantee of defeat. 2.7 million horses versus 2.5 million trucks. Animals versus machines. Past versus future. Germany versus America. And machines won. They always do.